Are you ready to start? Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I would like to welcome you to the Research and Innovation Days, and more particularly to our today's session, which is called Synergy Labels, a catalyst for additional funding. Now, what is this all about? Let me first start by reiterating the messages we have just got in the introductory remarks of our Commissioner and our Director General. The purpose of these Research and Innovation Days is really to bring you together, to have your saying and your input to the design of the next framework program for research and innovation, Horizon Europe. So this is really the overarching purpose of this event, that we exchange, that we discuss what should be the priorities for research and innovation over the coming years. When it comes more specifically to the purpose of our session on synergy labels, the background or the main purpose is to find out how we can maximize the impact of excellent research by combining different resources of funding, in particular at the European level. Why do we need to maximize the impact of excellent research and innovation projects? Mainly because the lack of funding does not permit us to fund all the excellent projects. And many of you, amongst you here today, have experienced with this. But it's not only about changing the source of funding, providing different sources of funding in the context of synergies. It's also about to create, in particular in our case, downstream synergies between funding from the framework program and then funding through the structural fund program. So we will have examples today how these instruments that are perceived or conceived to maximize the impact of excellent research projects in Europe will work in practical terms. Just if you have the examples later from the joint undertakings dealing with clean sky and with bio-based industries, you will see that these are areas, domains, which are part of our overall endeavor to achieve a climate-neutral Europe in 2050. And we can just simply not afford not to use these excellent research projects which have not sufficient funding, or where we need to provide complementary funding to achieve these objectives. So this is the purpose of today's meeting. Now I will introduce shortly the participants of our today's session. Magda DE CARLI, I got it right. She's laughing because I always call her Carla De Magdi, so that's not the right thing. So she is head of unit for the unit dealing with ERA and the country intelligence. Axel KREIN is the executive director of the joint undertakings Clean Sky. Stefania RACOLTA-CRUCERU is associate director in the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And Philippe MENGAL, he's an executive director in our joint undertaking bio-based industries. So I propose that we listen to their experiences, and then it's up to you to raise questions relating to the synergy labels, but also questions to the topics, to the substance the colleagues are dealing with, and so that we can get your feedback as how we should design the next framework program for research and innovation, in particular when it comes to the definition of the research topics. So I would like to ask Magda to start with her Seal of Excellence. Yes. She will present us the experiences under the Seal of Excellence.
Okay. So thanks, Wolfgang, and good afternoon, everybody. So Wolfgang has explained extremely well why it's important to valorize these good projects that have been making the effort to submit their proposal. So they have invested money to write the proposal, they have had the courage to eventually compete internationally, and then unfortunately, just because of lack of funding, eventually they were not taken on board by the program, and they deserve, in fact, kind of a second chance because they are excellent projects. I will focus my presentation on the process we have been using in order to put in place the Seal of Excellence, because I think there are some issues that it's interesting that are key when we embark in this idea of having a synergies label, because there are things that needs to be taken into account in order for the process to be successful and not to raise expectations that are eventually disappointed. We started with the Seal of Excellence, in fact, in 2015, but the basis was a declaration of the Commission at the moment of adoption of Horizon 2020, where in fact it was explicitly mentioned that projects that are issued by the SME instrument, but also Marie Sklodowska-Curie, ERC grants and collaborative grants, they which have not been funded just because there was not enough budget, they are still excellent projects. This was a declaration and it remained there without for the moment, a concrete implementation. At the moment, I was running a unit that was dealing with encouraging synergies with the structural funds, and then we looked at, for instance, the SME instruments and what were the logic of intervention eventually of funds in order to provide alternative sources. And in fact, we saw that especially for the SME instruments, the structural funds had kind of the same logic of intervention. They were SMEs, they were close to the market, they were mono beneficiaries. So we decided to launch this Seal of Excellence in order to help these companies to find alternative funding. So for the projects to make, in fact, an impact, still an impact, and to be implemented. But we didn't do it unilaterally, so we did in collaboration with other colleagues from DG Regio. We went, we explained the concept, and we said, do you think that eventually structural funds can be mobilized for that? So the first thing is, in fact, that we need to involve the alternative funding eventually that we want to mobilize, exactly not to raise expectations that eventually cannot be met. Then we were, when we explained to the regions that this was a possibility for them to put in place this type of schemes to support the Seal of Excellence, we provided, in fact, in a community of practice to exchange practices on how to better do it. And this was very interesting because we had the information from the ground on what could be the bottlenecks and the difficulties, and we were then able to, one by one, to try to tackle them through extra support from our services. Then there were the information related, the support needed in terms of informations to be diffused. So once again, we went back to our program and to make it sure that we are able to transfer this information regarding the Seal of Excellence. And then lately, we went as well to see amongst the bottlenecks, for instance, was the idea of the state aid, and explaining exactly what was the idea behind the Seal of Excellence in terms of SME instrument, the specific characteristics of the SME instruments. We were able to start a dialogue as well for the simplification of state aid. So there are a lot of issues that we are covering and that were taken into account in the process. So we are now issuing around 10,000 Seal of Excellence since the start of the program, since 2014. And we have 41 programs, both at national or regional level, that have been engaged in supporting this Seal of Excellence, mobilizing a relatively important amount of money for that to provide alternative funding. So this is in fact something that was the results of a process that had a number of key points that I think it's important always to take into account when we set up this type of labels. First of all, the clarity on what the seal and the synergy labels eventually is about, what we are certifying. The feasibility, so trying to always try to see with the alternative funding whether there is a space to accommodate eventually funding for this, and I think later on we will see with the EBRD as well, what has been the logic, and also with the Memorandum of Understanding from Clean Sky. We have to assist the seal holder, manage expectation, and help them in raising the visibility. So this is our experience for the moment. We started in 2015 where it was just a declaration. It has become something important. Now is in a number of regulation, and we have achieved some interesting support measures for that. So I think if it's built step by step and in cooperation with the interested services, these are in fact initiatives that can help. And so my best wishes as well for the other similar initiatives to be in fact successful to mobilize alternative funding. So that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Magda, for your presentation. I think it was really groundbreaking work that you have undertaken under the leadership and guidance of our Commissioner Medas, who did not like at all that so many excellent projects under the SME instrument in particular could not get funding. So it is no surprise that the national funding organizations, in despite as to whether they have used structural funds or state aid, were at the beginning not so keen to fund a foreign's baby, if you want. But I think the success that you have indicated, that at least 41 programs already today provide funding for projects that are excellent because they have the label of excellent European peer review, really shows that there has been a buy in this philosophy. Also in particular, because as you have pointed out, the intervention logic under the SME instrument and the smart specialization strategies of the regions of the member states are very similar. Now, I think we will have the example of the joint undertaking Clean Sky. As you know, the overarching objective of the Clean Sky public-private partnership is to reduce noise and CO2 emissions of airplanes, a topic that is quite at the core of our discussions on climate-neutral Europe. And I think Axel has already the electric airplane in his pockets, at least how it should look like. Paper. But so Axel, give us your examples as to how you create synergies between the funding under the joint undertaking and in particular the smart specialization strategies of regions of member states. Please, Axel.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Yeah, good afternoon. I'd like to give you some concrete examples based on the explanation of the synergy labels which have been just done before. But maybe just one more word on Clean Sky. Wolfgang has explained already that we have the main target are our environmental objectives, minus 20 to 30% CO2, noise and NOx, and the competitiveness of the European landscape in the aviation context. We have roughly 800 different entities working in Clean Sky, universities, research organizations, as well as SMEs and bigger industry companies. So around 5,000 scientists and engineers working on Clean Sky. And it's not just the technology behind, but also the engineering community. So we are also ensuring that the knowledge base in Europe, and that was perfectly elaborated in the discussion which we had just before with Commissioner Medas and Jean-Eric Paquet, where the competence, the European competence elevation is an important element of research and innovation as well. We are working together with the European regions and also member states in supporting them in their smart specialization strategies. And you see here a map of the regions, respectively countries, we have been signing MOUs with. So we have at the moment 18 bilateral memoranda of understanding which have been signed. And you see here it goes from Portugal to Romania, from Greece up to Sweden, so covering the whole of Europe. And we are, as you can see, not just connecting to the I would say, conventional and established aeronautics countries and regions in Europe, but also we are connecting with regions in the newer member states, because also they can provide significant competence to it. And we are not just looking at the existing aeronautical competence, but also at competence which can be made accessible to the aeronautics environment in Europe. I'd like to highlight a couple of points here. We have at the moment 35 complementary projects in existence, and they are funded by ESIF, by European Structural and Investment Funds. And you see here the volume is 50 million euros on top of our funding, which we receive from the European Commission anyway. The scenarios go, it's quite a wide range of scenarios, from upstream research on innovation topics and local capacity building somewhere where maybe there is little capacity at the moment, to very, very complementary projects to Clean Sky at the moment, and which are more demonstrator, more downstream focused. And those projects are sometimes bringing the technology to a next technology readiness level after we have finished our work in Clean Sky. The second topic I'd like to indicate is the synergy label, and focusing very much on what Magda has said before. We have at the moment 10 so-called synergy labels, Clean Sky synergy labels in place. And those are projects which are either complementary to what we are doing, or sometimes there are even projects which are on our reserve list where our funding was not sufficient anymore to fund them. And I think that's a great asset, because those projects sometimes the second winner is a project with a lot of value, a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge, and those projects can't be sometimes funded because we don't have the funding available. And then this synergy label and the smart specialization strategies locally at regional level will help us to bring those projects to life and enriching our portfolio. And I must say, in all of those cases, this label is not awarded lightheartedly, but we are working based on independent evaluations. So we are looking at each of those projects. We are evaluating the impacts by our own people, but as well by independent experts. And I think that has really a substance. It's not just a project which comes on top of the things which are there. And I think what is very important for the regions, as I understand it from the regions, it also provides very valuable technical inputs to those, because we are helping them to assess the impact. We are helping them to assess the market uptake afterwards, so that they don't just get bottom-up projects from a local party, but they as well get a top-down understanding what, from a European perspective, what the value is. And I think that's really an added value we are providing there. A couple of examples from that list, and I think we have some examples which are more focused on national levels and some others which are more focused on regional levels. At national level, I'd like to mention the Czech Republic National Call, which was the first national call funded by ESIF, complementary to a work program of JTI, of a Joint Technology Initiative. Secondly, on a state basis, the Romanian national call called Complement Horizon 2020, which is a continuous funding scheme to fund complementary projects in Clean Sky. At a regional level, two regions which I'd like to highlight today. One is Campania in the south of Italy, a dedicated budget for aeronautics projects dedicated to priorities which have been set in the Clean Sky 2 context. And the other one, Occitanie, in the south of France, also a project which is directly connected to our priorities. What we also do is, in this context, as part of the MOU, we are offering technical assistance in the priority definition locally. So we are offering that assistance, and lots of those regions are making use of the competences which have been developed over time. And we are also helping them and supporting in this local prioritization exercise, which is very beneficial for the local environment, but also for us. And I believe it's a good example of a win-win. The win on our side, because we get additional competences, we get additional projects, we are accessing competence which would have been not accessible to us. And on the other side, the regions, the countries are contributing, and we are contributing to their success. We are contributing our expertise to what they do locally. I think it's a bit early probably to talk about Horizon Europe, but as there was so much discussion going on there and is going on there in the Commission, let me give you a little bit of an outline on how do we look at synergies in the context of Horizon Europe. As you may know, there is a clean aviation partnership is being proposed by the European Commission in that context. It's currently under discussion with the member states as well with the European Parliament. So the process is ongoing, led by the Commission over the next months. And the primary objective has been set as deep decarbonization. I think was also a big part of the speech of Carlos Moedas just before. And the focus of a potential new clean aviation partnership under Horizon Europe could be the deep decarbonization of aviation. And the clear focus which has been set by the Commission is impact. So if that partnership is going to come, impact is going to be a big point, and the partnership or potential partnerships are evaluated against that impact. And secondly, leveraging synergies. And there, the circle is closing again in comparison to what I have been saying on Clean Sky 2. And we have been now starting to think a bit about if the partnership may come, what could we do in terms of synergies? And I think we have identified a title innovation architecture where we start to discuss with our JU colleagues, being it BBI here today, but also the others like Axel, like Fuel Cell Hydrogen, the other colleagues there, in terms of how can we leverage the synergies among ourselves, but also with regard to the member states and the regions in Europe. And I think we need to bring that then to the next level. And I think this is something we need to think about within the European context, but also between Europe and the member states. Because the challenge, this deep decarbonization, so taking CO2 out of aviation completely, is such a challenge which can be only achieved when we are working all together. And I think we will have to rely on the competences which are locally. And I have indicated here that in this context, we would need to speak about a leverage factor of probably 10 in comparison to what we have been doing in Clean Sky 2 in being able to really achieve that goal which we have been given in this Horizon Europe context. I'd like to summarize. Clean Sky 2 has achieved significant synergies with ESIF, with regional or national calls. And in case the Commission will decide, together with the Parliament and the Member States, that there will be a partnership under Horizon Europe, the level of required synergies will have to be elevated to the next level. And our ambition is to multiply that ambition and the level of synergies by a factor of 10. And in order to achieve that, I think, and this is a point, those synergies is not just signing an MOU, it's not just signing and providing a synergy label, but it will require to work. Will require to work together to define common technical roadmaps. It will require to work in defining common potential calls, common demonstrators. I think it doesn't come free of charge. I think we shouldn't make a tick in the box, sign nice agreements, celebrate. It's workload, and that workload needs to be put together by all the parties who, in the end, I believe, commonly will benefit from that complementary work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Axel. We are all dreaming as to how we can roll out research results. And I think this is really an excellent example how research can be brought to the regions, in fact. It's not only about replacing the funding from Horizon 2020 through the structural funds. As you have seen, is also about complementary action, further develop the research projects that have been initiated in your place, in the regions, to roll out the research results. So I think this is another great example of how to ensure synergies, not only by replacing the funding resource, but doing with different funds something else, in fact, to further roll out, create demonstrators, to create new business models. So thank you very much for this excellent example. Now, let us see how the joint undertaking for bio-based industries goes about all these issues. And Philippe Mengal will be the speaker. Please, Philippe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Wolfgang, for giving me the floor. And thank you for your presence as well today on this session dedicated to synergy label, but also the signature of the Memorandum of Understanding with the EBRD. Allow me to start as well by thanking the European Commission, and particularly the GRTD, its Director General, Jean-Éric Paquet and Kurt van den Berg, for taking the initiative to organize an event of such a caliber today. So thank you very much. Despite I am sure that some of you in the room, I know some of you in the room already know what BBIJU is about, but let me make a very short introduction. The BBIJU, Bio-Based Industry Joint Undertaking, was part of the bioeconomy strategy approved by the European Parliament in 2012. So it's not BBI2 as Clean Sky 2, it's the first generation of BBI today. So it is, as well as Clean Sky, an institutionalized public-private partnership, and from our side, between the European Commission and the industry represented by BIC, the Bio-Based Industry Consortium, with an overall budget of 3.7 billion euro to invest in a research and innovation program under Horizon 2020. So BBIJU is part of the JU family, but with a unique element compared to the other. It is the only one dedicated to the bioeconomy. That's the unique part. And bioeconomy is a sector absolutely critical for Europe's future and policy priorities. BBI works towards three targets. The first one is de-risking investment in research and innovation, of course, but also in industrial deployment. Second, to organize the value chain, the so-called structuring effect. And the third target is to help reach the critical mass, as well the so-called mobilizing effect. It's key for the bio-based sector, whose actors, although fragmented, already generate today in Europe 700 billion turnover and 3.3 million of direct jobs. That's already the reality of today. During our years of operation in BBI, I'm very happy to say that BBI has been recognized as a high-impact initiative with a growing participation again in our last call. Innovation actions funded by BBIJU, and in particular the flagship projects at TRL 8, were absolutely instrumental. We have today in our portfolio 9 flagship projects that received around 200 million of grant from BBI, but leveraging 1.2 billion euro of private investment, and also generating more than 3,000 direct jobs, more than 10,000 indirect ones, all well spread across member states, and most of them being in rural area. It is a clear sign for the future of the sector in our continent. But among the things I have already mentioned, BBIJU has also the task to achieve maximum impact of the initiative through synergies with other funding instruments and programs. And this is exactly why we are here today for the launching of the BBIJU Synergy Label pilot. This BBI Synergy label will contribute to enhance synergies between BBIJU activities and member state and region in the field of bio-based industries, thus reinforcing the implementation of existing bioeconomy strategies in the European territories. The BBIJU Synergy label is awarded to BBIJU proposals that were deemed to be of high quality but did not receive funding due to budget limit. This synergy label should enhance the recognition of the organization participating in the proposal and facilitate the search for alternative source of funding provided by other EU organizations, EU member states, regions, or other possible funding organizations. 12 proposals are awarded with the BBIJU Synergy label, and some of the corresponding consortium are here with us today. 7 exactly. The BBI Synergy label pilot is a new initiative that recognizes the value and excellence of demonstration and flagship actions proposal submitted under the BBI Call 2018 and qualified above the quality threshold. on top of initiatives undertaken by several EC services, like the EU Circular Bioeconomy Investment Platform, and by big bio-based industry consortium, like the Regional Platform for Investment, BBI-JU approached different funding organizations to ensure the recognition of the proposal awarded by this synergy label. So we are also honored to have here with us today Stefania CRUCERU from the EBRD, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, with whom we are going to sign a memorandum of understanding to promote investment in the bioeconomy. This MOU aims at providing a general framework for cooperation between both parties in promoting innovation and sustainability in the bioeconomy sector. BBI-JU will pursue collaboration of this sort also with other funding instruments to ensure the full deployment of the bioeconomy across member states and region. All of this is happening at a very important political moment for the EU. Only a few days ago, we heard the political priorities of President-elect and read the mission letter of Franz Timmermans. I would lie not to say how happy I personally was to see the tremendous emphasis of President-elect gives to a more sustainable future. I am sure you all seen. I'm sure you have all seen that the very famous, by now, European Green Deal has to be presented in the first 100 days of this Commission mandate. Since its inception, BBI-JU has been contributing already to kind of a Green Deal. Only to name a few of our targets: first, decrease of greenhouse gas emission by 50% by 2030. Second, create up to 1 million green jobs by 2030, in particular in rural and coastal areas. And third, to replace at least 30% of oil-based chemicals and materials by their bio-based equivalent. May I remind you that BBI-JU is the largest and most ambitious public-private partnership in the world dedicating to achieving the circular bioeconomy and getting Europe set for its even more sustainable future. And here also, in the spirit of the panel today, I need to mention a very important point: striving into achieving a more sustainable future, aiming and protecting and improving our environment does not stem only from the fact that this is the right thing to do as a matter of just moral principle. It is not only about greenhouse gas emission reduction, it's also about biodiversity, soil and water preservation. It is the right thing to do also as a matter of rational choice, because the environment and all green technologies linked to it will create the basis for the new circular bioeconomy model in Europe, and I hope also elsewhere in the world. With very few words, this is what BBI-JU has managed to do. This is what BBI-JU has managed to combine: elevate EU industrial research and renewable resource potential in order to bring them into European Green Deals and ensuring job creation and competitiveness. And I mention all these elements together because one without the other is incomplete. And why is that? Because they cannot deliver the maximum of their potential and therefore the maximum of benefits for EU citizens and the environment. Thank you very much. Thank you as well for the BBI team for setting this. It was really a teamwork from program unit, communication, legal aspect as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Philippe, and your colleagues from the BBI joint undertaking for this initiative. I think as a chairperson of the governing board of the joint undertaking, I really support and endorse these efforts. Now, before I will give the floor to Stefania, and she will tell us how the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development can provide complementary or additional support to these projects. You will have certainly noted that our two last speakers were supposed to talk about the synergy label, but they couldn't abstain from making some promotion for their organizations and the future of their organizations under Horizon Europe. Now, evidently, I will not pronounce myself on this question because we are doing impact assessment, we are consulting you, the stakeholders, on all these questions. But permit me just a remark, I think, and still continuing our deliberation about providing impact and being impactful. I think that raises the question of how we govern research, how we govern research projects, and who are the players involved in the research projects. And one conclusion of my quite some years now in DG Research and Innovation is really that we need what Axel has referred to as cooperation. Cooperation between academia, cooperation between business, but we also need this cooperation in scale and scope, in fact. And I think this is what partnerships deliver, be it contractual ones, be it institutionalized ones, be it other forms. But it's this kind of governance, I think we should carefully consider whether this is not very important if we want to deliver results for our business, for our society. So, after this remark, now over to Stefania. Stefania, please tell us, what can you provide us in terms of support?
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Thank you very much, Philippe. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here today to represent EBRD. Yes, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, we are committed to continue to scale up investment in energy and climate action. The European Commission is one of our key partners in delivering this very ambitious goal. Maybe a couple of words about the bank, how we operate and what we do. We are a development bank, but we have a special mandate from our shareholders, who are majority owned by European countries. But we do have to apply sound banking principles to all the investments that we support. Having said that, of course, we apply a proper due diligence process to all the investments that we want to support. But another thing which is very important for us is to make sure that we are bringing in private sector, that all the investments are additional and that they have what we call transition impact. At EBRD, investing in green economy and in transition to a low carbon economy is core. And we have so far invested about 31 billion euros in climate change mitigation and adaptation projects. This is meaning that basically around 40% of the annual business volume of the bank is directed towards green projects. This is all across from energy efficiency, renewables, small scale, but also large scale, to resource efficiency and water saving projects and environmental soil and air pollution remediation environmental remediation projects. Our business model is not just to provide financing. What we bring in is technical assistance. We bring in policy dialogue, and we are committed to forming collaborative partnerships and networks. That's why the opportunity to work together with BBI joint undertaking is very valuable for us, and we believe that working together we can bring more investments to fruition on the ground. Our region of operation is not the entire European Union, is only Central and Eastern Europe, the accession region and the neighborhood countries. And this is a region where we see a lot of opportunities for the bioeconomy and industry. However, we see a lack of investment, so we are committed to work together with you at BBI Joint Undertaking to hopefully, be able to bring our internal knowledge, the funding, the technical assistance, and support companies to get their investments off the ground. I would like to add a couple of points on the urgency of accelerating this kind of activities in our region. We, together with other MDBs, have committed to double the investments that we do in the areas of climate change mitigation and adaptation. We want to further accelerate support to help decarbonize industries across the region. And what we can bring in is de-risking, something which we believe it's important in face of the many risks and barriers that this type of projects face. We can mobilize other co-financiers to come alongside us, and we can use our, let's say, in-house technical expertise alongside your expertise to look at these projects, to assess them, to improve their structuring, and with our business model and risk-taking capacity, we are hoping to see a few developments pretty soon. So that being said, we are looking forward for the cooperation. We think this will be able to generate significant benefits for the local economies. It's about mitigation, decarbonization. It's about job creation. And I'm very delighted and honored to be here today and represent the bank and sign this memorandum of understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stefania, for this initiative of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It's really highly appreciated. So I think now it's almost your turn. I think our colleagues have really done a great job. They've well explained what exists in terms of synergy labels. They have rightly pointed to the big achievements, and I insist both of BBI and Clean Sky Joint Undertaking, in areas which are decisive for European futures in terms of societal challenges, but also in terms of competitiveness. And I think you merit a hand. So now it's your turn, and I think it's about the synergy label. But you are supposed to just provide statements. Evidently, if you have specific questions, you are also welcome. But this is your opportunity now to provide input also as to how we should conceive future public-private partnerships, but also your ideas and proposals when it comes to create additional synergies compared to what we have just indicated to you. So I think, please come in shortly. It should not be much more than 1 minute. Please let us know where are you from, what you are about. Not all, but in particular in terms of your job. So I think we have about 10 minutes, and then we will sign the Memorandum of Understanding and the first seals of excellence for the joint undertaking BBI. So, who is first? Please.
Thank you. My name is Anja Sordunya. I'm the Executive Director of España PPP. It's currently a CPPP, and we aim to become a co-programming partnership. So thank you very much to all the speakers today. I am very, very much interested to know much more about these synergy labels, because we really believe that the partnerships can really play a very good role, also the co-programming partnerships, on how to match the projects into different funding opportunities or financing opportunities through the banks also, so that we deliver the impact. Because Horizon Europe only supports up to TRL 7, so I really support that, and I also want to get inspiration from my BBI friends or Clean Sky colleagues also on that. So I will be very happy to talk afterwards on that. But I really support it. I think it's very good, and I would like to also have it for us.
Thank you very much. There is a nice cafeteria close by. Great. Are there other comments, please?
Yes. Thank you. My name is My name is Edith Herzog, and I represent here GEANT. GEANT is the high-speed network to interconnect research and the data economy. And we are not a PPP, we are an FFPA, the Financial Framework Partnership Agreement. And I'd like to ask about if the synergy label will be entitled only for the European Partnership Agreements or the PPPs, or it will be also for the FFPA part. And my second question that, yes, I am very happy to see the Seal of Excellence and the traditional, how to say, experience with the synergies, but what's about the new one with the CEF program and with the Connecting Europe facility and the Digital Europe program? Because finally, and I think this is why it's so important for all of us, that in the sensor-driven economy, to interconnect the data will be not just something nice to have, but it will be a key enabling technology. Without none of the programs can fulfill their tasks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edith. On the, I will be very short. I think what makes the specificities of what we have discussed is that I think every funding organization or every funding organization is entitled to indicate what kind of projects they promote, even if they have not got funding for them because there is a lack of financing. I think what we have looked at the European level is really in the framework of Horizon 2020 that we think that we have an excellent review process in terms of project selection, and thus the excellence label, which is at the basis both for the Seal of Excellence and to the extent that projects are not funded, they rely on this kind of seal of this kind of excellent evaluation through Horizon 2020 project evaluation system. But I think any, as I have indicated, funding organization, I think, has a kind of autonomy to single out those projects which they consider to be of a key value and of key importance. I think what is also important is that, in particular, when it comes to the finding of other resources, is that, in particular, if you look at the SME instrument, you have really a kind of similar objectives of the SME instrument under Horizon 2020 compared to what the smart specialization objective in structural funds is. So there is a clear kind of similar intervention logic, which also makes the Seal of Excellence easier, but we can certainly discuss. Are there other statements or remarks? Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Tomasz Poprawka. I represent Polish Academy of Sciences, and which is a learning society more or less interested in really rather basic science. So with this in mind, I would really like to ask whether there are some other ideas on developing the Seal of Excellence in terms of supporting, let's say, creation of the new centers of excellence, or whether any ideas on really supporting the frontier science, let's say, within the ERC. And the other thing is having an experience in the last couple of years on implementing the structural funds. What are the ideas in the Commission on really bringing the structural funds and the Horizon Europe funding together? Because there are some technical problems really where we would like to combine two sources of funding. Thank you.
There is nobody else than
So
Magda who will be best able to reply.
So for the Seal of Excellence, still already today it is provided not only to the SME instrument but also to the Marie Sklodowska-Curie action. In that case is mainly the social funds that will intervene as alternative funding, and we have cases already of support to the Marie Sklodowska-Curie grantees, and this is important as well to attract talents. So this is something that some countries are using as well to attract talents, and to the ERC as well, so European Research Council as well, it will be soon available. Teaming as well, it's in the process to be provided, and there is actually even easier because already for the teaming projects, the managing authorities are aware normally already of the projects, and they have already committed to provide complementary funding. So in this case, it's easier. In the future, yeah, we are trying to align as much as possible the rules, where it is possible, in fact, to be able to use the same eligible costs and the same aid intensity. So we are working as well for that, either when it's alternative funding or it's combination of funding, and to have exactly as much as possible the same understanding. So there is good progress done as well between services. We are still fine-tuning, because everything that we do now in terms of discussing with our colleagues will then have to be reflected in the regulation. But definitely this is a very good moment, so it's a plea to everybody to come up eventually with your own ideas eventually on how this would be what could be the solution to certain problems, because we are finalizing now the implementation of it.
Thank you, Magda. Please.
Andrea Bos from Netherlands Ministry of Education, Culture and Science. I see this as very positive developments, also to use the synergy labels within partnerships. Well, I was wondering, do you feel that the regions already make use of the opportunities that the Seal of Excellence and the synergy labels provide? Or are there still particular barriers that make that difficult, that we need to tackle when we work towards Horizon Europe?
Maybe a short word from Axel and from Magda, and from very short, please.
I think it's a question of knowledge about the existence of the seal. I think that's the first thing which is probably preventing people from moving ahead. And while we have 18, there are many more regions in Europe which obviously could participate there. I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is probably also that the amount of work which should come with it. Some see it rather like also to be critical, a public relations tool to sign something, I think, but this is not enough. I think we need to do the next step and provide common roadmaps. And I think that additional work which comes on top, and which is usually also constraining, because if you do a common technical roadmap, then you have to give a bit away. It's getting towards each other and working with each other, where you have to give a bit away, a bit of autonomy in brackets, and this is something which is also a point which need to be recognized and realized by the people, and this is maybe preventing as well the willingness to engage.
And very shortly from BBI, what you have pointed out is part of the pilot, because maybe I was not fully clear in my presentation. That's a pilot. We have already identified some possible hurdles, and that's something we have to look at now during the phase of implementation.
Okay, a last question or a statement, please.
Yeah, Will van den Tweel from DSM, sitting on the front row. So we had a flagship proposal. And when you look at flagship proposals, there you are looking at proposals which are very concrete. And I'm asking myself, what does and how can synergy label help those flagship proposals? Because you are looking, you already have a consortium you are working with. You want to build a plant in a certain location. What can the synergy label there add? And for example, a question I also had was the tools you as a European bank have, is that only loans, or are you also thinking about equity, and is that a possibility?
Okay, so for the BBI synergy label, we decided to focus only on demonstration and flagship action. Of course, there is a lot of interest also for research and innovation, but it's more earlier in terms of maturity. And we focus on demo and in particular flagship, because there we have a well-identified project, a place, a leading company, which makes feasible to establish connection with different funding organizations. But we know as well that flagships, I will not go into the technicalities, for some banks are not yet considered in Europe as bankable. So that's really part of the exercise, again, of this pilot, to identify the right funding organization that can support this type of project. But the advantage is that, I repeat, we have a well-identified location, a business plan, a company, a business case as well, and a potential market.
Thank you, Philippe. Stefania, do you want to add something on this?
At the EBRD, we make use of a wide range of financial instruments. In general, if we are to look at the projects that we financed so far, I think we use mostly debt, but we also actively invest equity. Sometimes we invest both debt and equity. When the risks are fairly high, we are also seeking to bring in other financiers. So we are looking to syndicate or to work with another multilateral development bank. We can work together with EIB, with KfW. It's useful to make use of concessional co-financing. So many times we are trying to mobilize resources from the European Commission or some of the global climate funds that can support projects. The question is, of course, if these instruments, if we have access to these instruments and if they are eligible for certain countries or regions. But we do have a lot of specialists. We have sector specialists, we have climate change specialists, and we have also people who work on donor co-financing. And we can bring in all this expertise to look at specific proposals. So we are really looking forward to have something concrete to look at together with our bankers and our donor co-financing units. And we hope to this exchange of information to work from both sides, so from BBI and the flagship projects and the synergy label projects to come to us, so we can have a look, review, assess whether we can invest and what would be a right structure for us. And what we want to do is also, whenever we have projects, clients coming to the bank interested in investing in this kind of project, that we can support them with technical assistance and help them prepare projects, approach BBI, apply for the grants, so that it's a mutual, let's say, collaboration. But the end game here is really to see actual investments happening on the ground. In our case, it's EU 12 region that we can invest in. So Western Europe is not in our mandate, but everything from, let's say, Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia, and going east, we can cover. So please come and talk to us.
Thank you, Stefania. So this brings us to the end of the session. I really would like to thank you for your presence and for your interest and for the discussion. I found it extremely fruitful and interesting. I hope it has given you envy to still continue to contribute to Horizon Europe. The consultation is still open. If you feel that you should contribute to the design and you have good ideas, please let us know. For the rest, we can now advance to the signature of the memorandum between BBI and EBRD. So do we have music? And
thank you. No. Thank you very much.
So please, and I would like to congratulate those who will receive now the seal of excellence of BBI. Thank you very much for your interest and your participation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Can I ask all speakers to sit on the first row, because at the end, of course, you will take a picture.
Can I sit here?
All the group.